Hey, it's Ethan.
Oh, hey. You alright? You just disappeared the other night.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good. It's Mia. She's not dead, she's alive. She's back.
They found her? How? What happened?
I don't know. Look, I don't know how, but she's back. She's back somehow.
Resident Evil took an almost clean break from its long and winding overarching narrative when it reinvented itself with RE7 in 2017. But now that the series is well and truly back on track, we're expecting the upcoming Resident Evil Village to have a lot more connections to the series' larger narrative. Even so, this is still a direct continuation of Resident Evil 7 first and foremost, with Ethan Winters returning as protagonist and the game's story picking up where the previous one left off. As such, with our incursions into Village almost upon us, here we're going to take a look back at the entire story of RE7. Before we go ahead, please consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos every single day, and your support really helps us out. With that out of the way, let's start. Resident Evil 7 takes place in 2017, with plain old vanilla guy Ethan Winters taking the role of the primary protagonist. For 3 years, he believed his wife to be dead after she suddenly went missing on what she claimed was just another plain old babysitting job. That all changes though when, out of nowhere, she contacts him again to let him know that she's still alive, asking him to come get her at a place called the Baker Residence in the bayous of Dolve, Louisiana. Now, obviously, Ethan drops everything and heads straight there. The Baker Residence, however, is no place for anyone to be. As soon as Ethan arrives on the scene, he's met with unpleasant scenes, to say the very least. The house is run down and decaying. Its owners are nowhere to be seen. In fact, according to the locals, they've been missing for some time, and their house haunted. Meanwhile, as Ethan enters into the house through its back entrance, he sees everything from parts of dead animals strung up in the swamps to a dead crow in the microwave in the house itself. Shortly after making it into the house, Ethan manages to find Mia, and though she is, much to his surprise, alive and well, it's clear to him that something is very wrong. She's incoherent, babbling about her daddy and how they're going to be a family, and it's plain as day that she's been through the grinder in the time that she's been dead to the outside world. And the circumstances have definitely had a terrifying effect on her, for reasons Ethan doesn't understand yet. Mia suddenly becomes violent while the two of them are attempting to find a way out of her house, forcing Ethan to take her on in a fight. The fight, however, does not go very well for him, with a freakishly strong Mia stabbing him in the hand with a screwdriver, throwing him through a wall, and even chopping off one of his hands with a chainsaw. Ethan finally manages to kill her in self-defense, but not really, and more on that in a bit. But he doesn't get very far after that. He's immediately ambushed by a man who welcomes him to the family and knocks him out with a punch to the face. When Ethan comes to, he realizes that things have only gone from bad to worse for him. His hand has somehow managed to be reattached to his body, but he's been tied to a chair and sitting at a dinner table, surrounded by the most deranged scene he could possibly imagine. Around the table is sitting the Baker family, the patriarch Jack Baker, his wife Marguerite, their son Lucas, and an old woman in a wheelchair, and all of them seem to be enjoying a meal of human flesh and organs. Soon after Ethan regains consciousness, the Bakers try force-feeding him the disgusting food as well, but are interrupted when they hear a doorbell at the house. Jack and Lucas presume it's a cop that's apparently been troubling them for some time now, and the Bakers all leave the scene to deal with the situation. Ethan takes the opportunity to free himself, and soon comes into contact with Zoe Baker, the daughter of the Baker family. Conversing with her over the phone, which is something that happens quite a lot throughout this game, he learns that the Bakers have apparently been infected with something that's not only turning them into the monstrous and hostile beasts he's seeing now, but also giving them superpowered abilities, as well as the ability to quickly regenerate, making them incredibly hard to kill. The same virus that has infected the Bakers has, in fact, also spewed black gooey monstrosities all over their estate, called the Molded. Zoe tells Ethan that there is a serum that can be used to cure both herself and Mia, who, yes, is still alive. And then if Ethan can find the components required to formulate the serum, he'll be able to help both women and get out of the Baker residence, and far away from this entire nightmare. Naturally, Ethan agrees to do just that, and sets about looking for a way out of the house and for the aforementioned components. Over the course of the next few hours of Resident Evil 7, Ethan manages to make his way through the madhouse, facing many trials and tribulations. On top of coming up against a plethora of molded, he also faces off against Jack Baker multiple times, each time managing to come out victorious by the skin of his teeth. Each time, though, Jack seemingly dies, only to come back stronger and more deformed later on. Ethan also takes on Marguerite, who, thanks to her infection, has the ability to spawn and summon swarms of massive bugs. And after a grueling encounter with her, Ethan manages to put her down for good. Eventually, Ethan manages to recover the components required to craft the serum, but he still faces yet another hurdle when Lucas captures Zoe and Mia. Ethan is forced to participate in a deranged escape room-style game put together by Lucas, full of deadly traps and hazards, but successfully gets through it with his life. He and Lucas never face off against each other though, with the latter fleeing from the scene as soon as he realizes that he's failed in trying to kill Ethan. When Ethan finally encounters Zoe and Mia, he has 2 serums with him, but not for long. He's attacked by a hideously deformed and mutated Jack Baker one last time, and during that fight, to put him down once and for good, he injects him with the serum, seemingly killing him for good this time. Of course, he isn't dead, more on that in a bit. Now, with just 1 serum in hand, Ethan faces a tough decision. Will he cure Mia or Zoe? The game does let the player make the decision here, with some things being affected based on that choice, but let's just go with what's canon for the purposes of this recap. Ethan cures Mia, promises Zoe that he'll send someone back for her, and together, husband and wife escape the Baker residence on a boat. Before we get any further, it's time to pause and take a trip down memory lane and explain exactly how the hell everything that's been going on even started. Well, for starters, where did this virus and the molded all come from? Well, seeing as this is Resident Evil, after all, they came from a bioweapon. This bioweapon, created by a crime syndicate known as the Connections, was engineered in a lab and given the appearance of a small girl. From mind control to spewing out large quantities of the molded, this girl, named Evelyn, and given the designation E001 by her creators, had no shortage of terrifying abilities. Evelyn was not without, well, let's call them manufacturing defects. For starters, her mental state was highly unstable, which meant she was often desperately seeking out familial connections and tended to use her abilities to force people into believing that they were her family. Seeing as she had been artificially aged to take on the appearance of a 10-year-old girl, she also required regular doses of chemicals from her creators to maintain a stable physical form. Not long after her creation, fearing theft or sabotage from their competitors, the Connections tasked 2 of their agents to take Evelyn to one of their secret labs in Central America. As it turns out, one of those 2 agents was none other than Mia herself, whose babysitting jobs had always been little more than a front for her true nature as an agent of the Connections. 3 years ago, she was traveling with Evelyn and fellow Connections agent Alan Droney on a tanker called the Annabelle, under the cover of a couple and their daughter. Their voyage was interrupted by a hurricane, though, during which Evelyn unleashed her powers, destroyed the ship, and killed everyone on board other than herself and Mia. The ship wound up crashing in the swamps of Dulve, Louisiana, where the 2 of them were found and taken in by the Baker family, who of course had no idea what they had just signed up for back then. Over the course of the next 3 years, under Evelyn's influence, they would go on to abduct and kill dozens upon dozens of people. Evelyn herself, meanwhile, continued to age rapidly, and though she did eventually manage to stabilize her physical form herself, by the time she did so, she had taken on the form of a feeble old woman in a wheelchair. At some point during these 3 years, Lucas Baker was also contacted by the Connections, who immunized him against Evelyn's control in exchange for providing observations about her. While Evelyn remained under the impression that Lucas was still under her control, Lucas quickly rose through the ranks as researcher for the Connections, but again, we'll get back to that in a bit. Alright, so back to the present now. Ethan and Mia may have gotten on a boat, but they didn't get very far. Soon they came across the wreckage of the tanker Annabelle and are immediately attacked by Evelyn's molded. Their boat crashes, with the 2 of them washing up to the ship's wreckage. And Ethan is taken captive by the molded. The next section of the game is spent playing as Mia, as she makes her way through the ship looking for Ethan and getting back her memories of what went down on the ship, including much of what we've already talked about. After recovering a tissue sample of Evelyn, Mia manages to find and rescue Ethan. Handing him the sample, she tells him to go back to the Baker residence and kill Evelyn once and for all, while she stays behind to try and fight off Evelyn's attempts to bring her back under her control. After making his way through a network of tunnels and nearby salt mines, Ethan makes it back to the Baker house, where he comes face to face with Evelyn, injecting her with a necrotoxin composed using the tissue sample Mia gave her. In a final, desperate attempt to bring the situation back in her control, Evelyn undergoes a final transformation, turning massive and monstrous and absorbing all of the mold around her to essentially swallow the entire Baker house. As Ethan takes her on one last time, a squad of soldiers led by none other than Chris Redfield himself intervenes. They drop a high-powered weapon from their helicopter, which Ethan uses to kill Evelyn once and for all. Afterward, Ethan and Mia are rescued by the new arrivals and are seen flying away in the final scene of the game. But wait, there's more. Resident Evil 7 also has 2 major DLCs that reveal some pretty important information. For starters, who the hell is this military group being led by Chris Redfield? Well, it's Blue Umbrella. As its name suggests, several members of the former Umbrella Corporation reformed as a PMC, with their sole intent being to clean up the messes left behind by their former company, and fighting against bioterrorism however they can. Chris Redfield, still a BSAA agent, has teamed up with Blue Umbrella on a temporary basis because their goals are aligned. And, well, what are their goals? Putting a stop to the E001 bioweapon and investigating the connections. In the Not a Hero DLC, once Ethan and Mia have been safely flown away, Chris sets out in the salt mines close to the Baker estate to look for Lucas Baker, who he knows to be an agent of the Connections, and is their best and only lead on the criminal organization. What they don't know, however, is that Lucas has gone rogue. He's killed several of his fellow researchers and aims to steal all of the data on Evelyn in the mold and sell it to the highest bidder. Chris manages to put a stop to his machinations though, killing Lucas in the nick of time and managing to stop him from transferring that data to an unknown third party. There's also the End of Zoe DLC, which involves, as its name suggests, Zoe Baker, who was found in the swamps by her uncle Joe Baker, Jack's brother, who's been living in the swamps as a hermit for many years. Curiously enough, Jack Baker still isn't dead and has transformed into a monstrosity known as the Swamp Man. End of Zoe follows Joe's attempts to cure Zoe and protect her from the Swamp Man, with it all culminating in a battle between the two brothers, with Joe finally killing Jack once and for all. For real this time. Zoe and Joe are both found by Blue Umbrella soldiers and Chris Redfield, who's been informed about her situation by Ethan. And that's it. That's the full story of Resident Evil 7 and its DLCs. Resident Evil Village will see Ethan Winters taking center stage once again, while Mia and Chris will also be returning. Something weird is going on though, with Chris seemingly having shot and killed Mia and kidnapped Ethan and Mia's infant daughter, forcing Ethan to set off on another nightmarish adventure. There are several plot threads from RE7 that are yet unresolved, while Village itself is also bringing in entirely new mysteries of its own, so there should be quite a meaty story to look forward to. With the game launching on May 7th, thankfully we do not have to wait too long to experience all of it. And that brings us to the end of the video. A quick request before we conclude. We upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.